Monsignor Athanasius Schneider has chosen to speak, and he does so by commenting on the latest Vatican document, one that many inside and outside the Curia are observing with concern. Someone, finally, has dared to say what others are thinking and keeping quiet. Stay with us until the end. A storm is blowing in Rome. The Vatican's recent statement on the Virgin Mary has provoked harsh, even indignant, reactions among large segments of the clergy and laity. This is not a marginal theological dispute, but a question that touches the very heart of the Catholic faith. The traditional titles attributed to the Mother of God, including co-redemptrix and mediatrix of all graces. Formally, the document does not abolish them, but in fact it empties them, setting them aside in practice and catechesis. A subtle maneuver, in line with the trend already seen with Amoris Laetitia and Fiducia Supplicans, not to openly deny the doctrine, but to reinterpret it until it becomes unrecognizable. This is the point that has sparked the reaction of numerous bishops, cardinals, and theologians faithful to tradition. The widespread feeling is that once again, the center of ecclesiastical power is rewriting with a light but determined hand centuries of faith and popular devotion. The case exploded precisely because it wasn't just a change in language, but a shift in theological orientation. The intent was to strike at the Marian heart of the Church, that maternal and merciful dimension that has represented a refuge for the faithful over the centuries. In recent weeks, discontent has begun to take shape. It's no longer just private murmurings in the corridors of the Curia, but actual public interventions, open letters, and analyses accusing the Vatican of having betrayed the sensus fidei, the sense of faith of the Christian people. Among the first to react was a name now familiar among defenders of tradition, Bishop Athanasius Schneider. He once again spoke with his customary diplomatic composure, but also with a clarity that cuts like a blade. When silence seems to fall on crucial issues, there is always someone who breaks the apparent uniformity with the quiet force of truth. It is not the first time that the Kazakh prelate has called on Rome to be more faithful to tradition. Already at the time of the first signs of doctrinal confusion, he had been among the first to ask respectfully but firmly whether the Church was not losing its own language of faith in the name of a vague pastoral updating. In his latest intervention, published by Vatican journalist Diane Montagna, one of the few writers still willing to ask uncomfortable questions in the pontifical press rooms, Schneider hits the nail on the head again. The title of his document, as sober as it is blunt, reads, "The saints, doctors, and ordinary magisterium of the Church could not have been mistaken." A phrase that sounds like both a theological pronouncement and a moral challenge. The bishop, with his characteristic calm tone, dismantles the idea that centuries of Marian teaching can be dismissed as a simple error of perspective or exaggerated devotion. He clearly states that the doctrine of the co-redemption and universal mediation of Mary is not an accessory of faith, but an integral part of the Catholic identity. From the words of St. Irenaeus in the 2nd century to the teachings of Popes Leo X, Pius VI, and Pius XII, a continuous line emerges. Mary is intimately associated with the work of redemption, not as the principal cause, a role that belongs to Christ alone, but as the sole cooperator, whose freedom and obedience made the incarnation itself possible. Mary, by obeying, became the cause of salvation for herself and for all mankind, wrote Irenaeus, opening a theological path that would be confirmed by saints and pontiffs over the centuries. Schneider emphasizes that the idea of Mary's subordinate cooperation does not arise from medieval sentimentalism, but from a profoundly Christological reflection. The mother steals nothing from her son, but belongs to him so fully that she participates by grace in his redemptive mission. Consequently, he emphasizes, it cannot be argued that the constant teaching of the magisterium, confirmed by popes, saints, and doctors of the Church, has deceived the people of God for centuries with inappropriate language. The reasoning is as straightforward as it is devastating for the theses of the Reformers. If the Church could have been wrong about Mary for so long, then nothing is any longer guaranteed, not even the reliability of its own magisterium. Schneider writes that by adhering to the traditional teaching on the co-redemptive and mediating work of the Virgin, the faithful do not stray from the right path of faith, but remain anchored in a solid and well-founded piety towards Christ and his mother. These words convey the firmness of the saints, the certainty of those who believe that faith is not born from theological debates, but from the living continuity of the truth transmitted. And while in Rome, they talk about new Mariological perspectives, Schneider brings the discussion back to its essential point. Our Lady is not a poetic symbol or an archetype of welcome, but a real person, chosen by God to participate in a unique and unrepeatable way in the work of redemption. To take away her titles means to take something away from Christ himself, because every Marian truth reflects the Christological truth. The Kazakh bishop urges the faithful not to be disturbed. The truth, he says, does not change with documents or the fashions of the times. It remains intact in the faith of the simple, in the prayers recited for generations, and in the hearts that continue to call Mary by the names that the Church has always used: Mother, Queen, Co-Redemptrix. And while the debate heats up, two figures remain center stage: Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, prefect of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, and the Pontiff himself. Ultimately, it will be up to them to decide whether this new theological line will remain a passing experiment or become official doctrine. But the question surfacing among the faithful is another, simpler and more direct. Will they have the courage to step back? Will they know how to listen to the voice rising from the people of God? The same voice that for centuries has invoked Mary as co-redemptrix and mediatrix of grace. For now, all is quiet from Rome. Yet the silence doesn't calm, but rather amplifies the unease, because the Sensus Fidei can't be erased with a document. She continues to live in our hearts, in the rosaries recited in families, in the chapels where the faithful, far from the spotlight, continue to call the Virgin by names that no decree can ever erase. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.